Okay, I'm just down in Taranaki at the moment. I'm just talking to Steve Hills. It's been a collector since the mid 60s. So, some time. This is him when he used to collect German badges, and he was right up in the paper. So, he used to collect a lot of German stuff. He's on sold it and moved to different interests. So, here we got Steve there in 2019 in December, and he's just going to talk about his relic stuff.
Yeah, what we have here is a Beaumont Adams double action revolver, probably the most commonly used in the land wars. I acquired this one from Richard Marks probably 20 years ago. The plaque's a bit faded, but it says this Adams revolver was recovered from bush to the rear of the Hauhau of Te Poreri, Turangi in 1955 and presented in 1971 to Dr. M.C. Ongley. And Dr. Ongley sold his collection, I can't actually remember when, but yeah, it'd be 30-40 years ago, and Richard Marks bought this out of the collection. It's a relic, obviously, but it's interesting because two chambers are still loaded. So the guy who owned it was very probably running away, and the hammer is in the cocked position, so he was almost certainly using it when he was killed. Yep.
And over here we've got just a bunch of relics, is it, Steve, that you've picked up in different sorts of areas? These sort of parts here.
Yeah, we have some interesting things here. These are buttons I've all found on Taranaki sites. We've got the 50th Regiment, the 12th Regiment, the 57th, who were quite prolific around here, as were the 65th. I've seen a lot of those.
Also got this button here that you believe has a little story to it that you know of.
I've heard a story several times, and I always thought it was folklore. But speaking to Nigel Ogle, who runs Te Whiti Museum in Hara, or near Hara, if you ever get a chance to go there, do so, because it's incredible. And he's got amazing knowledge of Taranaki history. And he said a lot of these have turned up, and it's believed that soldiers used to flatten brass buttons and trade them to marry maidens for favours, pretending they were gold coins. And again, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I've heard the story many times.
Yep.
This particular one's an 18th Irish, who are known to be here. This one's the remains of a 57th cap badge, which I found at Waitara myself many years ago.
Which relates to this 57th.
57th.
The button here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I say, the 57th and the 65th were very prolific here. This Victorian bridal boss, quite a few of these turn up, but this one's quite significant because I got it off a guy called Rex Try, who some of you may or may not know, and it was given to him many years ago when he worked at Taranaki newspapers by a workmate, and the workmate's grandmother had dug it up in the garden of a wee cottage, and the cottage, it's long gone now, but I remember it was called Albahura Cottage, which is the name that the 57th used. That was their battle honour. And I can remember the cottage, and it had Albahura and a prancing horse on the front. And this was dug up in the garden of that cottage many years later, so it almost certainly belonged to a 57th Regiment officer.
Very nice. And here we've got some basic pipes that were sort of brought over to New Zealand in the land wars that they used to smoke with. Yeah, so we've got an anchor on one side and an artillery piece, and on this one we've got a sailing ship plus another anchor.
Yeah, the pipes are very prolific. Maori loved smoking, so you find pipes on just about all battle and redoubt sites. As I say, both sides smoke them. Well, not both sides, but Maori and Pukangiora, there are a lot of smokers.
Yeah, and probably, 95% of all males around that time were smoking, weren't they?
Oh, and a lot of females too.
A lot of females.
Yeah.
And here we've got axe head, is it? Broken axe head? That was found.
Broken adze, yeah, found on the site of the Pukangiora Pa at Waitara. This is a Victorian gentleman's riding crop top. It may or may not be significant, but it was excavated at Pukangiora, White Cliffs, where the Reverend Whiteley was murdered by Maori, and also the whole garrison of Bamba Gascoigne and his family and others were killed by Maori. So it could possibly have belonged to one of them. It's of the right period.
We've got part of what a cannonball here, have we? A couple of...
Part of a mortar shell.
Oh, a mortar shell? Okay.
Yeah, this one's got an interesting story. I was up at the Tauranga Gun Show around 5 years ago. I didn't have a sales or a trade table, so we arrived on the Friday and couldn't go to the hall. So we wandered down the road, along Cameron Road, to look for some alcohol and some food. And there was an ancient church there. So I went into the church and they were rehashing the car park, ready to get it sealed. And I noticed 3 little shiny spots, which are not shiny now. So I had a bit of a dig with my car key, and out came this piece of an exploded mortar shell. And the cars had been running over it, and these 3 little points were bright. And having a poke around, within minutes I found 2 fired, flattened 50 calibre revolver bullets, obviously from the same period.
Nice. Yeah.
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 And while we're at Gate Pa, this was recovered from Gate Pa. It's an 1851, either an Adams or a Tranter. They used the same frame. And the chamber and top strap are completely gone. It could be as a result of a multiple discharge, which happened with percussion revolvers sometimes, or it could be, and what I believe is it's been hit with a bullet fired, by the opposition, that's carried away the chamber and the top strap.
Yeah, once again, it's cocked and firing position again.
Yeah. You find most of them are, because they were being used when the owner got killed.
Okay, so what?
We have here a telescope, possibly had a wagon wheel over it, but that was found by me at the Camp Reserve in Waitara, which is now called Pukangiora Domain, but it was one of the highest hills in Waitara, and the Imperial soldiers had a camp there in the late 1850s, and they were keeping an eye on the building of Pukangiora Pa. The optics aren't very flashy anymore. But this was obviously lost, and remember in those days you would have had bracken and fern, a metre deep.
No markings or anything on it, or
it doesn't open. It's what you see is what you get. It's been underground for over 100 years. Yeah. But ironically, that's probably what they used to watch Pukangiora with before their unsuccessful attack.
We've got a couple of coin and a little ink vase.
Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to know the farmer who owns the land on which the Waihi Redoubt is now. And the Waihi Redoubt was very, very significant in the 1860s in Taranaki. It's where the Armed Constabulary and Wontempski and the Forest Rangers were based. From sort of 1866 to 1868, 69. And from there they went on their various expeditions to the Battle of Motoroa. They attended the relief of Tiratura Mokai, and they went to 2 engagements at Tanutu Otamanu, and on the second of which Wontempski and a lot of people were killed. It was a disaster for them, especially losing Wontempski. But this is an 1850s, 60s inkwell. This is an 1860 coin, both found on that site.
Right. Right, so we're going to move on to...
A bit more.
Yeah, a bit more here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another 1854 Beaumont Adams double action revolver. I acquired this from Paul Farmer in Auckland, and he acquired it many years ago from Maurice Leonard, who was a well-known collector dealer in Auckland. And when the new road was being put through sort of Mary in the 1960s, Maurice Leonard knew the significance of the site, which was the Battle of Rangariri, and yeah, he followed the machinery and picked up an awful lot of stuff. He always liked to imagine this was Captain Mercer's revolver, who was killed there, but there were many officers killed and it could have belonged to any one of them. But this is definitely Battle of Rangariri. I believe this one's had a bullet strike. If you look at the trigger, there's no way the trigger would rust through at the widest part. Yep, and also the remains of the trigger guard are bent off to one side. And I believe a bullet has hit this, taken away the trigger, part of the guard, and probably the owner's finger.
Quite possibly.
Again, you know, on half cock being used at the time. The axe.
There's something a little bit different here, axe. Many people wouldn't know what this sort of thing is, and I didn't really know what it is, but Steve's going to explain about the axe.
Well, when iron axes and other tools became available in the 1850s and 60s, Maori threw away all their stone tools, not their green stone and not their whalebone patus, because they had special significance and, you know, symbols of rank. But they adopted the tomahawk as instead of the Marys. The tomahawk became one of their very favourite weapons. And the normal tomahawks, as they arrived from England, had big wide shoulders, which were really good for chopping wood, but they were a bit heavy to swing in battle. So it was very common for the heads to be reshaped. But this is a very common shape for the Land Wars period. It's got the original handle. This one's interesting because I used to run ads in the paper for many years wanting to buy, you know, cannonballs, old guns, swords, you know, all the usual stuff. And a guy rang me up and he had this. I'll just turn it over. Yeah, and he was much older than me and probably long dead now. But he said in the late 1950s they used to go to their cousin's place, which was adjacent to the Tenuta Otamanu site, and they played in the bush. And he was playing in the bush with his cousins, and there was an ancient hollow tree, and they found this inside it. It's weathered, obviously, but it hasn't been directly in the weather, and it's almost certainly been there since the Battle of Tenuta Otamanu.
Very nice.
It's definitely a fighting tomahawk. Yeah.
We've got a couple of things related with this, haven't we? Yeah.
We have, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a sword and two things found on the same site.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's try to move a little bit of this stuff because it's starting to get a bit cramped. Right, there you go. A bit more room.
What we have here is a pattern 1822 English officer's sword. It's pre-1845 because of the quill pattern blade, the pipe back blade.
Yeah, they were quite early in the length of them. You knew they were a fighting sword, and this is quite a decent length. We've got the Victorian crown at the end, so we sort of know it's all officers' pattern. Try to bring that into it a little bit more clearer there.
Hold it up
Yeah,
if you like.
yeah. It's got the Victorian crown in there with the the Victorian markings, and also the top of the sword there. So anyway, we'll just talk about these couple of things here. Yeah.
Yep, well, I mentioned the Camp Reserve in Waitara, where British Imperial troops kept an eye on the building of Pukangiora Pa, and then in 1860 they decided to attack it, and they made a huge blunder. They attacked early in the morning when it was still dark, and they attacked through swampland adjacent to the Waitara River. So they were struggling through a swamp in the dark. They'd fired a lot of artillery at the Pa, but most of the Maori weren't in the Pa. They were hiding in the bush. And the British really got a severe ass kicking, to be quite honest. And there was one officer who was killed there, a lieutenant, and this is almost certainly his sword.
You got the name of the lieutenant there?
Actually, I don't have that bit of paper with me, but we can sort that.
Yeah, so there was only one lieutenant killed at the site, and these were both found within very close vicinity of each other. Yeah.
Yeah. The revolver was found late 1960s by a guy called Willie Williams, who was a freezing worker at Waitara. He was very probably looking for puha or watercress. Again, it's cocked, probably in use at the time. And interestingly enough, on this one, it's still got some fired nipples intact, some fired percussion caps.
So it hadn't had all its rounds fired at the time.
Yeah.
And once again, it's in full cocking position. So I've had a couple go off, and he still had a couple of rounds in it when this was dropped.
Actually, when I got this, it still had 2 chambers loaded. They were these 2 here, but it was so rusty the balls just rolled out. Yeah, they didn't stay intact.
But this is a naval Colt, dating roughly what year?
It's an 1851 Navy.
American made or?
This is a London Colt.
A London Colt?
Luckily enough, there's just a hint of backstrap left there, and it's an iron backstrap. That makes it a London Navy, and these were issued to British officers along with the Beaumont Adams, as we've seen here. So this was found late 1860s, and about 10 years later, the sword was found only about 15 feet away. And the officer concerned was shot very badly through the neck. They got him off the field, and he struggled. He was in horrendous pain all night and died the next morning.
So these were probably in a swamp area, and as he fell, he probably had this on him, and his sword was taken off him because he was injured at the time, and they probably sunk into the swamp and were lost for 100 years.
100 years.
100 years, yeah. 100 years or more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
they're a good little bit of history there.
only an officer would have had this.
Yeah.
And only an officer would have had
well,
this.
quite a high ranking, I would imagine. Yeah. So.
And I mean, if he was going forward with sword and revolver in hand, as they did, and he got a bullet through the neck, he would have dropped these and fallen to the ground and wait for people to come and save him.
Yeah. Okay then. So we've got that one. We've done that one. Just move to this one.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is another Beaumont Adams double-action revolver. They were probably the commonest revolvers out here in the Land Wars period. This one's heavily rusted, as can be seen. And this was found by myself at Pukangiora Pa site, which was the biggest, most powerful Te Ātiawa Pa in Taranaki. And it's very famous for a couple of things. The Waikato used to come down and kick the snot out of the Ātiawa every now and then. In the 1830s they came down on a massive raid, and a lot of Ātiawa at the Pa, rather than be captured and eaten or taken back as slaves, jumped over the huge cliffs into the Waitara River. It's a very famous local event. But then in the 1860s, the Imperial troops attacked Pukangiora, and there was also the Te Ere campaign, which went up Waitara Road, and that was the first major use of saps here. they were cutting saps to get right up close to the pa. And the Maori had come out at night and fill them in again. So it's all quite interesting.
So very good. And so how did you find these things? You didn't use a metal detector in those days?
No,
1976?
no. Well, at one stage, the place was heavily forested, you know, the secondary growth, and at one stage they cut down all the trees. And a couple of times after that, there were huge heavy rainfalls, and you'd go up there and all the stuff would be exposed on the surface. I got heaps and heaps of fired bullets. I found this, I found some buttons, I found quite a lot of stuff.
Okay then, well, I've got another little sword here that's just the blade. Obviously the handle's gone. It's just come out of, what, some site you picked it up, Steve, or?
No, I was just looking for my notes. That little bit of pink paper. I just have to consult my notes. My memory's not so good these days. Yeah, there were 2 or 3 items I acquired off Paul Farmer from Auckland. This was amongst them. And the blade came from Cornelius Egan of Waiok. And it was recovered near the Battle of Tuakau site, near the Alexandra Redoubt. That's that fella.
That's that fella. And
that's a later blade than this. Yeah, that's the post-45 blade.
Yeah. And what we got, brown best parts.
Brown best, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so brown best, this is a later piece, probably. So we've got the brown best here, and we've got a couple of yeah, so we've got brown best here.
Right, are we rolling?
Yeah, we're still rolling. We haven't stopped. We haven't stopped.
Lucky I wasn't scratching me nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, what we have here, I'll do this one first. This is a brown best barrel, recovered from the Battle of Gate Pa site. And it's interesting because it's exploded. So someone's either been in a hurry and they haven't put the ball right down, either that or it's been plugged with mud. Either of which would blow the barrel apart. But that's Gate Pa, real piece.
And what, all these parts come with that one, did it?
No,
your brown breast. No,
that's just
yeah,
that one's by itself.
yeah.
And this is a Shortland pattern brown best barrel. And obviously the whole gun would have been lost in a battle. Wood's long gone, obviously. We've got the complete lock, again cocked, probably ready to fire. I haven't actually checked if the barrel's still loaded, it might be. It's got the original side nails and the brass side plate. It's got the remains of a trigger guard.
And these were all found at the same, this barrel and all this was all found at the same site, or?
These were all found together, yeah.
By you or by somebody else?
These were found by, again, Cornelius Egan of Waiuku. And lost my bit of paper again. All right. Yeah, these almost came from the Battle of Titi Hill around Lusk's Clearing, which was on the 23rd of October 1863. Yeah, and the forest rangers were there, and this is almost certainly used by Maori in that engagement, and lost in mud and buried for years.
And these flintlocks were carried on, used right up until what period?
Well, these were very prolific in the Maori musket wars, sort of 1820s to 30s. But they continued using them as they went into conflict with the Pākehā. And people say, why would they use flintlocks? But there's several reasons. One, because remember these were only 30 years old then, in 1860. Secondly, a lot of Maori who were considered rebels couldn't go out and buy brand new Enfields, you know, the latest and greatest, and didn't have the money to do so anyway. And any kind of firearm that went bang and was usable, you know, was utilised. So this may have been 30 years old at this engagement, but yeah, it was still a working firearm.
And this one's come off what, probably a 1853 Tower musket, you believe?
Just not
Part
sure whether this is Enfield or Snyder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit rotted away and all seized up, so it's a bit hard to tell.
But it looks like it's in cocking position again.
Yeah, cocking position.
Yeah.
And that was recovered from the site of the Battle of Orakau in the Waikato.
And that's where my great-great-grandfather was at, and he got shot through the leg. So this could have been his gun he dropped.
Okay. We'll check if there's fingerprints on there.
Yeah, we'll check if there's fingerprints there. Yeah. But that's just a basic display. We've got one other sword here, which is really, really nice. And we're just going to finish this quick little video off with this thing. But I always think it's important to video this and having the person that sort of collected it and has been quite passionate about it explain what it is, so for future generations as reference. So we've got a little note here with what it's all about and the condition of the sword. And it shows a bit of pitting and whatnot, but it's really nice. And this is done on what sort of board?
I'm not actually sure.
Sure, it's just sort of made up. It was probably made up
actually,
many years ago.
Looks like carry or beach.
Yeah, carry or beach.
And someone set it up for display, so it'll sit like that. But
yeah, looks like carry hasn't got much of a grain in it, which is quite known to our New Zealand wood. But it was probably put on this about, I don't know, 50 or 60 years ago, I would imagine at least. Yeah.
Perhaps not quite that far ago, but what's really interesting about this sword, it's a pattern 53, used by all sorts of New Zealand units, and in South Taranaki there were a heap of battles in the 1860s, Turatura Mokai, Tanutu, there were several things going on, and the English lost at several of them. And what this is a sword that's been taken from probably a dead colonial soldier as a war trophy. And one way you can see that is the grips are in really good order. So this was probably quite new when the soldier was killed and lost his sword. It's been captured by Maori.
For the rest of the blade, you can tell that the sword and the grip's been on it all its life. There isn't a lot of deterioration on the grip, which is really nice to add to the sword. Probably stored in a reasonably dry place. But I think Steve can tell you a little bit more about the story of that.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of old forries down at Manitai back in the 60s, a lot of them dating from the Land Wars period. And one was pulled down in 1968, and this sword was found inside the wall. So that's actually preserved it. It's got a bit of dry rust and it's got a hole through the blade here, but it's survived very, very well. Obviously hasn't been wet. And yeah, as I say, that was a trophy taken by Maori, probably off a dead colonial soldier, and then put in the wall of a forry where it remained till 1968 when it was found, and someone has since mounted it on this board obviously and kept the history, which is good.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you, Steve, talking about the stuff. We're just going to wind it off there. Like a lot of the stuff I'm going to keep for many years, and I'm going to display it. You'll see it around at different sorts of shows and military shows, because I think it's quite a nice little collection, and it's probably where I want to move into. There's not a lot of ground dug. We didn't have many wars in New Zealand. Obviously, it's just the land wars. No World War I, World War II, or Japanese never come here. So this is what we find in New Zealand, and this is what it's all about, and collecting this sort of stuff is quite special to me because I've had my great-great-grandfather served in it, and it's what it's all about. Cheers.
Can I just say one final thing?
Yep.
Yeah. I know a lot of people, I was when I was growing up, I was fascinated with the American Civil War, and it all seemed so boys' young dream, adventurous kind of stuff, but we had exactly the same thing happening here in the 1960s. It was almost a civil war.
Yep. Where you go, Steve?
Yeah, it was almost a civil war. I mean, a lot of it started, well, because I was born in Waitara, I know a lot of the local history, and there was a war happening here in the 1850s, and Pākehā weren't involved. It was a war between two factions of the Te Ātiawa Maori. One half wanted to sell the Waitara block and one half didn't, and then that erupted into a war. They were shooting each other, and then a couple of white guys and settlers got caught up in the crossfire, and then that's when it escalated into something much bigger, and they were still fighting over the rights to the land.
You want to finish it off there, Steve?
Yeah, no, well,
thank you very much for telling us all about the history of this stuff, and it'll stay with this stuff for many years after I pass away, and all that sort of thing. So very nice. Thank